Hey guys, I'm here with Connor. He's my sports performance coach, and today we will talk to you about why do you need a sports performance coach and what can you get out of that process of working with a sports performance coach. Connor, can you introduce yourself shortly?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on, Camilla. Just want
Of
to say
course.
to start out, honor to jump in on your podcast and cool to see. I'm excited to see where you take this.
Thank you.
Um,
I'm happy to
so
have you here.
yeah, no problem at all. So as you kind of alluded to, my name's Connor Murray. So I've been basically a coach or coaching since 2016. I've done an undergraduate in sports science, strength and conditioning for sports. And I also have a master's degree in coaching science as well. Um, I've been a kind of lifelong martial arts participant as well. Been doing jujitsu, traditional jujitsu, since I was 9, and then later on Brazilian jiu-jitsu has become more of my kind of passion. Like right up until even today, I still avidly kind of training. A couple of times a week for sure.
Nice.
And yeah, I just kind of that's where really my interest in kind of physical performance kind of stemmed from, just kind of doing sports myself, a little bit of rugby in school, and just always kind of wanted to kind of know the nuts and bolts of like, well, whenever you see these really elite performers, like how are they, getting to that level, or what, really, to be honest, for me, it was like watching some of the MMA guys on like
Yeah.
UFC countdown shows, watching them
Yeah.
doing like their clean lifts and the different kind of strength lifts, and yeah, that whole kind of thing just really fascinated me to like see like, wow, like they're doing not only the martial arts, but they're also doing physical training
Yeah.
to bring about their like max physiological potential, and that kind of really was something that interested me. So
Nice.
that's kind of a little bit about me,
Mm-hmm.
my academic background and whatnot. And I guess like over here now, I'm living in Budapest, obviously, is where I got the good fortune to meet yourself
Yes.
and your now fiance Jens as well.
Yes.
So obviously here I'm training like some kickboxing athletes like yourselves, some sports people or rugby guys, and also just the kind of English speaking personal training clients as well. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what my day-to-day work life is. But no, happy to answer any questions, and hopefully we can have a good conversation about
I'm
some of these
sure.
topics.
I'm sure because I had a lot of questions throughout I think now it's been 1.5 year we worked together, and I've had a lot of
Yeah, it must
questions, and
be.
you have always been able to answer them. And just we've always been sure that what we do in the DM makes sense. So if I think like, why is this necessary for me as a point fighter, you can always answer that. And that's been a very important part of the journey, and of working together, I think, because yeah. So I just want to
Yeah,
share this knowledge with the people out there.
no,
Um,
and that's great, and I'm happy that it's an important thing for you to see the transfer from what we do in the weight room to your kickboxing, because it's probably some of the biggest pitfalls that a lot of
yeah,
martial arts trainees will go into, is that they don't train in a specific way to their sport. What they're
exactly.
actually doing a lot of the time is they're you know everybody kind of knows what, like, there's benefits to strength training and whatnot, and of course better body composition, or you can produce force better, those kind of things. But the general knowledge of what to do for athletes is pretty poor, and it's very poorly
Absolutely.
communicated.
Yeah.
Like, you'll see a lot of martial artists doing just like typical bodybuilder style training, because that's just what they've encountered
Exactly.
as strength training. And we'll probably touch on it later, but a lot of that
Absolutely.
type of training, it's not really conducive to you're performing in training. And it can actually, a lot of that type of training can take away from your performances if the amount of volumes that you're doing on certain lifts isn't appropriate. Usually
Exactly.
people, will go and do like a bodybuilder routine, and then they're, just absolutely dying with muscle soreness. That's not beneficial for your training. So
Exactly.
obviously
Yeah.
there's, a bit of a divide between what's optimal practice and what information the general, martial arts trainee has.
Exactly. But that's actually very much into my first question, because can you first tell us why athletes should have a sports performance coach? Like, what is the value that a sports performance coach, and when I say sports performance coach, it's much like a personal trainer, you can also call it that, but I like the word sports performance coach because I think it's telling you that this person is helping you with your sports performance as an athlete, and it's not just like go to the gym and tell you to do 5 push-ups and then go home. It's more than that. It's like an overall thing.
Yeah.
But what can you as a sports performance coach bring to the table that a kickboxing coach cannot?
So what I would say the main benefit of having a sports performance coach is that you're going to have somebody who knows all of the pitfalls, has probably researched, the probably done the stupid shit that, I don't know if you don't mind me swearing on this
No,
show,
I
but
don't. This is
yeah,
our
it's okay.
podcast.
Okay.
We
But yeah, okay. But yeah, just so that you don't, do all of the dumb shit that, it's so easy to fall into, like I said, doing like a bodybuilder routine or doing a powerlifting routine, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be a powerlifter. You don't want to be like an all right kickboxer who's amazing powerlifting skills. What you want
exactly.
is to be able to exhibit forces which are expressed in your sport, and to be able to consistently do them throughout the time demands of your sport. So that also encompasses endurance as well. Many personal trainers that you might get, they're just kind of coming at things from, maybe they've learned a little bit of exercise physiology, maybe they learned, what the basic set and rep ranges are for, building muscle and like the generalist kind of training goals. But if you just go with like a typical personal trainer, like a lot of the time they're going to give you, some good training, and they're going to be very well meaning, and they probably, their heart's in the right place. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be as tailored for your sport. It's not going to be, looking at the physiological demands of your sport and breaking down like what are the specific most common injured sites. Like, that's first of all, any sports performance coach worth his salt is going to do a needs analysis. You're going to have to look at like, well, what physiological capabilities do we need to attain the optimum performance in your sport? And then we're going to reverse engineer that. You have to then design like a battery of fitness tests where we can actually gauge, like, you, Camilla, where are you at now? Because if we don't know where you are now, then we don't know where we're going to go from, and we can't actually reverse engineer back to that date. So that's kind of where I would find the difference between like a generalized kind of a training approach, which is what I feel like most of what you'll get out there with personal trainers. They're probably going to give you just this kind of a general training approach. Whereas I feel like somebody who's, a sports performance specialist is going to actually be able to take you as you are, and we're going to be able to devise something that's an individualized strategy that takes you as a person, your previous injury profile, your,
Exactly.
what your personality traits, like what motivates you, like to, all of that kind of stuff, which is, in our work together at the start, we probably, used a lot more of the, I was giving you like the, different forms to fill out and whatnot, your daily tracking to,
Yes.
that's because I didn't really know you at that time. So, whenever there's less kind of an athlete coach relationship that's been built, then we kind of have to kind of profile you and, figure out. But then, once we've kind of been training together for a longer time. It's kind of like I kind of know now. We kind of know each other's patterns. I know what exactly is kind of what your kind of things that you need to work on will be, or what your habitual kind of a style of training is going to be. What amount of stress is Camilla going to be able to tolerate recovering from? But at the start of working with someone, there's no way that I could know that. So it's important to be tracking a load of these metrics, stuff that's subjective, like how you feeling today. Once I kind of know you more, or the athlete more, you can just ask these things and you can get a far better read than any kind of a questionnaire will give you. But to get to that level of individualization, you have to be in it for the person that's in front of you. I suppose that's where I see a lot of training that's just generalized. It's just made for the group, it's just made like a broad paint brush stroke, so I suppose that was a bit of a rant, but that's kind of where I find is probably the main benefit. And you also ask kind of compared to a kickboxing coach. I suppose I would, on that aspect of things, I would have to give a big asterisk and saying, like, do I think like a sport, you just go sports performance coach and you can, your kickboxing coach to, whatever, they're, trying to denigrate them? No way. Your sports performance is, going to be the most important thing is going to be your technical sports skills. You can be the best, weight room mover. You can, have the perfect, functional movement screen scores. Your mobility could be, on point, everything. But if you don't have the technical, tactical abilities from your kickboxing coach, well, that's, you're going to get onto the competition mats and you'll still get slaughtered.
It doesn't matter. So,
of course, the sports coach, your kickboxing coaches, they're always going to, sports skills training takes precedence over everything. And that's very much my philosophy as well. Whenever it comes to your additional sessions where you're doing strength and conditioning stuff, is I want you to be primed and, like a machine for those training sessions, because they're what realistically you're going to get so much benefit for. But what I feel that, the biggest gap that can be bridged within sports training is, making those things all integrate together so that your strength and conditioning accents and improves your sports training sessions with the kickboxing, rather than them being two separate entities within the training week. It should all blend together, and it should be this, because it does. Your body doesn't tell that stress is coming from sports training or strength and conditioning training. Your body just sees this amalgam of stress, and you're going to have to, if you're doing things well, try and optimize the amount of those stressors that you're exposing yourself to, so that the recoverability is optimized. And there's ways that we can sequence that into a program, and play about with how much intensity that you get and when do we pull back and those kind of things. And look at people write books on this stuff. So
but I think it's very important what you say, that the kickboxing is still the most important, and what is important about the sports performance training is that we are tailoring it around the kickboxing, and we are making sure that I can perform my kickboxing at any time, and we are just adding to my skills by training when I have to kick, we will work on the specific muscle groups that I use for the kicks, or just, to, what is it called? Like to tighten my core,
so bracing your core, engaging your abs.
Because that's such a, I have to use that all the time. So just to learn that, because that's not something that your kickboxing coach is necessarily telling you, that it's important when you do this skill that you engage your core, but this is what you can tell me, and then I get the benefit of that and I can use it in my kickboxing training. So
Yeah. And those are my favorite moments when I'm coaching somebody, whenever we do something in the gym and then the next day you come in like, hey, Connor, that thing that we were working on, I actually like used that when I was like doing my,
Exactly.
roundhouse kick. And it's like, yeah, like that's brilliant. That's,
That's the
goal
purpose.
achieved,
Yeah,
like that I would rather that than, like, okay, yeah, it's nice if we add like 10 kilos onto your trap bar, deadlift or whatever, and that's all lovely, but the real benefit to your sports performance is whenever you like come back to me and you're saying, hey, Connor, this thing that we worked, I can feel faster, I feel like I'm able
exactly.
to close the distance, in a more rapid way, or I can make more movements within this sequence than what I was able to, and that's the goal. That's what's going
Exactly.
to win you medals, at the end
Yeah.
of the day. And that's what the sports performance training, it shouldn't lose sight of that. You shouldn't lose sight of, you can chase different metrics, you can chase higher jumps and whatnot, but it's really, we want it to be transferring, and if it's not
Exactly.
transferring, then what are we
Then
doing? And
it
probably
doesn't make
wasting your
sense.
time.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just a very expensive waste of money. And like that's what probably a lot of a lot of
Yeah.
these, like, if you go with a trainer who isn't educated on these things, or they're going to run you through some general kind of a training thing, that probably not only can this type of training actually not make you better, like it can
Yeah,
probably make you worse.
exactly.
um it can probably, even just by the virtue of it taking you away from kickboxing training to do an extra, like freaking bodybuilder split or something,
Yeah,
then that's probably just time away from the sports training, which you could
exactly.
be getting better at that.
That's not what we want.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
But I wanted to say this later, but I think it fits very well now. So I will just mention it because you talk a lot about
Yeah.
how this is individualized. Like this is between you and me. You are making sure I'm getting better. And what you do with me will not work on any other person. At least not to the full extent, right? So this is where I want to
Mhm.
say that finding a sports performance coach or any coach, it's okay that you're picky because you want to have someone on your team who wants to be there, who wants to reach your goals with you, who is motivated to do the work that needs to be done to reach your goals. So I don't know if you
Absolutely.
remember, but we kind of had like an interview before we even started working together. We met up and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
like answered each other's questions, and then we decided, okay, let's give it a try. I will do 10 trainings, and if I like it, I will stay. If not, I will just find another one. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's absolutely okay to be picky about this. This is your goal. This is what you want to achieve. So yeah, make sure you find the
Definitely.
person who wants to work with you.
You're
Um,
making an investment in yourself, and
exactly,
you should research that investment, because,
exactly.
you don't want to, find yourself, a couple of years into a bad investment to realize that, and look, I'm sure it can happen, and, better get out then, get your stop loss in, maybe it would have been better to do that stuff earlier, but
Mm,
yeah, look, it's, something where definitely, even just personality wise,
yeah.
there's some people who, their coaching style maybe isn't for a particular athlete, or
Yeah, like maybe
I
you
think I
just don't
really,
understand because the way the person is learning and the way the other one is teaching doesn't add up. So then you will not get
yeah,
anywhere.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, like an adaptable coach ideally should be able to adapt their style around what will get the best, because out of somebody, in a given day, I could have like between 8 to 10 different people coming into me, and they
yeah,
could be between 8 to 10 different personality types, or
exactly.
the different goals and motivators, from somebody who's just trying to shed a few pounds but lacks the discipline, to then like you kind of yourselves, who are running at like 7 to 10 sessions per week, and like
Yeah,
highly internally motivated, but maybe then it's a case of, we need to actually see, well, how much stress is going into the system. Maybe we actually need to just pull back, and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's
Sometimes it's like
also
that.
that kind
Yeah,
of a thing too.
yeah,
So yeah, and it depends. And of course, with the kickboxers or the martial arts, or any kind of contact sport guys, it's always important to have, I guess somebody who has like an understanding of the principles of training, so that like you guys are always getting injured, banged up. So, like there's days where you just come in like, oh, sorry, my freaking ankle's, the size of a freaking tennis ball, or whatever on the side of it. So
Yeah.
Somebody who can write the program in pencil and can
Yeah.
program around those things. And it's not a case where, oh God, gee, this is the program that I run and now you can't do this program. So,
Yeah.
just to be able to be adaptable is really important, because,
Super important.
whenever you're in kind of contact sports, you guys are always getting banged up, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. You have to
Yeah.
be able to kind of work around those things.
Yeah. Yeah, like if I come in and say my shoulder is hurting today in a specific exercise, you will just tell me, okay, stop doing that, and then we do something else. Or you will even start implementing like, how can we work on your shoulder to get it better? And I think to anyone listening, this is the kind of coach you want. You don't want someone who is pushing you through bad pain, or just telling you, oh, okay, but you want someone who can work with you.
Yeah, and it's crazy that you might think that you would have to say things like that, but definitely there are levels, and there is, some people who are getting qualified in our industry. There is no protected term for like a strength and conditioning coach or sport performance coach. Like there are some certs, like you can look up for people like CSCS, or somebody who, generally if somebody has a degree, like that's probably a good sign. They've at least put a significant period of their life and sacrifice, financially to go towards this endeavor. But it's still not necessarily, I've seen some people with degrees who I wouldn't trust to butter my toast, to be fair. So like there is levels, definitely, but just to absolutely, you want to, if you're investing in somebody, invest in somebody who's knows what they're talking about.
Exactly. And I also think like maybe this is not for everyone, but for me it was also specifically important that you will not make me feel embarrassed, because when I started with you, I could not even do one push-up, and it was super important to me that you will not be like, oh my God, you're a kickboxer and you cannot do one push-up. No, you were like, okay, then we know where to start. We will make you do one push-up. That's like the goal for now. And then very quickly I could do like 30 on my knees, and then we started moving to on the feet. But I was starting as a complete newbie, and you would just take me through all the steps. And I even remember, like, I think I've had a panic attack in the room with you. I've definitely cried a couple of times because my life was tough or something. But all of these things we've been through, and you've not made me feel embarrassed one single time. So this is also super important.
Well, look, you need someone who's understanding and will meet you where you are as well. Because look at people, athletes are also, prone to, traumatic life events happen. People have stress, people have, perhaps even more so because you're also physiologically stressing yourself to a significant degree.
Connor, can you maybe, because this was also one of my questions, like you always ask me, how was my day? How was my week? How is my body feeling? Like, can you tell me, why are you asking these questions? In the beginning, I thought you were just exceptionally nice, but I guess there's a reason to these questions.
Yeah. Well, overall, like I said, we kind of touched on it earlier as well with the kind of questionnaires that I would have given you, and just kind of what you have alluded to, this kind of a line that we've been talking to, like athletes are, very prone to psychosocial stressors as well. So, to have a questionnaire filled out of like, how's your mood state and whatnot, generally we're going to get like a numbered scale or something from that. But, once you kind of get to know the person and we're in like the coaching process, I can you kind of tell, and I learned this from Lauren Landau, who's a strength and conditioning coach with a lot of UFC athletes and stuff. And in his seminar, he kind of said, that the first test that he ever does is the looking test. And, the looking test is, you just like observe your athlete or, your client, whoever's coming in, whoever's come to you on that day, and you can, get some reads whenever you see like what's their normative behavior, what's the, typical way that they carry themselves. And, I suppose just, making that kind of, general conversation with somebody, you can quickly tell if there's something, going on underneath the hood. And, with people who are, some people are different in how they, will show these things. And some people, it's a kind of a thing where maybe you should ask them a little bit further, somebody kind of, needs the arm around the shoulder, that kind of thing. And then some people, it's like, okay, no, this person just needs to, go on their own. Maybe we're going to give them some, really, really explosive medicine ball work, and they just need to, vent something out. But it's also just kind of knowing, like there's research where it shows like people with high levels of academic stress will adapt in a less favorable way to strength training. They'll get like less gains, less, physical performance improvements and whatnot from, if they're in a high state of academic stress. So this all, although it seems like kind of nebulous to the training process, or it seems like something completely, left of field, it all actually does influence how well someone trains. How well they recover is a big one, because if someone's like stressed out of their mind and they're going home and they're not really getting sleep very well, then that's all going to affect, the end result and the amount of stressors that somebody's, capable of adapting to. And, it's nearly as if you have like this kind of a pool of recovery resource. And, the more stressed someone is, it's like you're withdrawing from that reserve of potential recovery. And
that's a good way to look at it.
You want to, yeah, it's like, the more stress is like, there's like a leak in the pool, and that pool is just, slowly draining. So you want to, assess somebody's in a really good place in their life, happy mood, they're all good. And, I think I even said it to you one time, happy athletes, you're going to perform well. That's,
exactly.
So of course we can't be happy all the time. That's not life. Life's, going to be difficult and challenging, especially if you're the type of person who's going to try and go for world championships in kickboxing and stuff. Like you're going to have plenty to stress about. You're going to have, a fair share of adversity, but you want to, I suppose strike the balance where you can, be it through mindfulness, or, even just like having some good friends who you can, be around, and just be, not in that role of, I'm switched on and, getting after it all the time. That there, it's something to be paid attention to, and something that, I suppose it comes back into the individualization and the kind of relationship that you have with the person that you're working with, that you can kind of, program around that. Because there's no weekend course where you're going to, learn that, this kind of stuff, or that, maybe, it's going to be for the best to pull back a little bit in the training that we do. And these are kind of intangible stuff. Like you won't get like a rep and set scheme for coming into contact with this, or there's nothing like for if a client has a panic attack in the gym, like there's no course where it's like telling you
what
how
to do.
develop like what should you do, and I guess it just comes from spending time being around people and being around loads of different situations. And I guess always, just having the trust, building trust with the person that you're working with. I'm in your corner, whatever it is, we're kind of, we accept where we are, and we take it from where we are, and we're going to, strategize and try and, make it so that you're, in a better place. That would be nice.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Connor, we are always training with the heart rate monitor. And can you tell the guys out there, why do we do that? What are the benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. So in general, like what I would say actually, and just related to the martial artists for combat sports in general, especially on this side of the Atlantic. Whenever we kind of look at the typical athletic profile of martial artists, where there's actually really good culture, gym culture in the US for wrestlers, actually, because in wrestlers, like most high schools, they'll have like a lifting program that kind of coincides, and for those guys, like a lot of the time they're like really well, we call it like training age. And you have like, your training age is maybe how many years that you have been following a structured resistance training program. And to contrast with the US, where like from even a young age, these guys have like pretty high and well developed, and girls as well, I should say, have very high training ages. For like the people, the trainees over in Europe and this side of the world, they tend to like, that you could be like maybe even like European champion level martial artist. A lot of the martial artists don't really have a whole lot of structured strength training behind them. And that's a big thing to realize, is that you might actually be like really, really super high level kickboxer, but you might be really, really, like, as you alluded to, like you're a very talented kickboxer, but like you couldn't do like a full press up. And, that's like a thing where it's like not like to wag the finger and say, oh, like you probably felt this expectation, as you said. Absolutely. Whenever you're coming in, like, oh my god, I'm going to be embarrassed or whatever. But like, rather than that being something to be embarrassed about, like for me, like that didn't really surprise me, because I'm just like, well, actually most martial artists don't do very structured training. Most martial artists, in fact, they, just the general trainees, like what they do is, from a physical perspective, is dog shit. It's like, and like, that's not disrespecting. Look at fucking, they're really, really great coaches who are coaching for the martial art, but just from like a sheer like strength training side of things, it's like just not programmed. It's put like random helter skelter circuits of doing like sit-ups and whatever, like
and most
ups,
often like
ad
do 100.
infinitum. Do 100, because why? That's like, what, that number sounds cool.
Exactly.
Like that's literally the forethought that's kind of went into it. And that training, like, some people can get really fit with that, but it's just kind of like, it's a survivorship bias is what I would call it, because it's just kind of it's, as we say, generalized, just throw some of this formula at everyone. And of course, the ones who are genetically predisposed to get really, really strong are going to get strong from that training anyway, even if it's dog shit program training. They just like that there is definitely things that are not equal whenever it comes to the genetic disposition to adapt to certain training protocols. And what you're just going to see is like maybe a coach who hasn't actually thought about what they're doing so much, like introspected. They'll probably see the guys who were going to get fit anyway doing whatever dog shit training, and they're going to get fit, and then they're going to say, well, look at this training made this guy, whatever, Lucas, and Lucas is world champion, and that's that's brilliant, because that's my training that made him get there. Is like, well, is that really what's best for everyone? You see this as well a lot of the time with people looking at like the really elite performing guys, trying to copy what, like, the All Blacks are doing in their strength split, and it's like, but that's not actually what got them to that level. Like, they're doing it now, but that's not the first steps that they took to get there.
But this is also because I always think, like, when I come to the gym with you, you are not expecting me to leave there and wanting to puke. Like, we are not killing it every time we are in the gym. It's actually more often, I would not say chill. Of course, it's hard. We're working hard, but the exercises are very, like, they are tailored. We will not use the same muscle groups over and over, like immediately after each other. And I will have,
Yeah.
you know, with the heart monitor, we will make sure that my heart rate is down before we start the next exercise. So it's actually kind of a nice training because it's not about dying, it's about
Yeah,
gaining strength.
exactly. Yeah. Well, that's it. Like you can, do training to break someone down, or you can do training to build someone up. And like we've kind of touched on what I suppose my general thoughts on the quality of the physical training that a lot of sports, combat sports coaches will do, just regards to like energy system development and that kind of thing. And like a great guy, actually, I've sent you some of his Instagram stuff, but Jeffrey Chiu,
Yeah.
he's yeah, I forget his handle now, GCTP training or something like that on Instagram.
Yeah, maybe I
But
don't
yeah,
remember.
he's I've definitely sent you a few of his
Yeah,
posts,
yeah.
but he really, really hits the nail on the head. He kind of like says, like a lot of kind of what's done is kind of like in this middle zone intensity where it's like really, really like lactic, through the roof. You feel like you're going to puke kind of stuff. And that's like what so much, martial arts trainees do. And, if you then kind of invest in a personal trainer who's done a weekend course, they'll probably throw the same kind of stuff at you again. But like, well, what you'll probably have noticed, and you can probably attest to what we have done a lot whenever we were first working with each other. I know you asked me about the heart rate monitors, and I promise I was circling back to it all this time. But yeah, like a lot of fighters don't. Well, the one thing actually that does come from traditional martial arts, which is pretty good, is that a lot of them do have this understanding that there is benefit in the aerobic base kind of training. So doing like kind of low level aerobic training, so doing like your long slow runs, that there kind of stuff, it's actually in the training of a lot of fighters. And for the general fitness of fighters, that's great, because if you're look at your resting heart rate, for example, and if it's over 60 beats per minute, then you can probably be fitter. You can probably build a little bit more of that aerobic base. So that would have been one of the metrics that we would have tracked, certainly in the beginning,
Yeah.
to kind of see where your fitness levels were at. And we would have seen, we would have done like Cooper tests on the rowing machine and stuff to kind of track how we were improving that system, where we were using the kind of modalities. So I would have programmed your kind of longer, slower stuff, which can also, you can use that heart rate zone stuff and do your sport specific training. You can be doing throwing combinations, you can be doing that and keeping within your 130 to 150 beats, and that's going to train that system very well. So stuff like that is really good, because what a lot of fighters will do is they'll think like, if it's not super intense, if it's not, then it's not giving me benefit, which isn't really true, because we know from research on the adaptations to aerobic training, there's adaptations that happen within the heart, particularly the left ventricle of your heart. Actually, whenever you keep it in that lower aerobic zones, it actually kind of like gets wider, or it like expands because of the increased amount of blood that can actually come into your left ventricle whenever you're doing that kind of really low heart rate zone. So then that actually has benefits at higher intensities, because then for each beat that your heart is making, it's actually going to force more blood throughout the body. So that, even training in these lower heart rate zones is going to have big benefits, even in the more high intense stuff, when it's structured into, an overall well coordinated program. So that's the benefits of the heart rate zones training. Then we can also look at things that we would have done coming closer to competition, then pushing some higher intensities. We would have looked at your heart rate recoverability, which is another big thing that we would like to see, is how quick can your heart actually, from like a maximum level, how quick can it actually drop back down? Because you guys do like 2-minute round, but then you have a minute off. So we really want to be able to push it as hard as we can for those 2 minutes, so that then whenever you get back onto the stool in between rounds, if you can be right back down by the time that you're that minute is done and you're ready to go again at that intensity, that can be such a weapon, to have that kind of
Exactly.
conditioning is, to have, it just gives you confidence as well going into a tournament. If you know that, I can push, whatever, 5 hard rounds, whatever amount of hard rounds, and you can push it at a pace that's beyond what your opponent can do. That can
Exactly.
be such a useful tool, but it comes from, not just, pushing as hard as you can in every training session. It comes from, planned exposure to structured training. You need to increase gradually, progressively overload the system. And you'll attest, like some of those sessions that we would do, it's not a lot of fun when you're going at,
Nope.
maximal heart rate zones. And that's why, we would have done like a big aerobic block to start off with, so that, like you said earlier, like it wasn't a case that you're sprinting to the bathroom to go, throw up, because
Yeah.
that's what a lot of fighting conditioning turns out to be. It's just like super intense, absolutely blast the system far too hard. And, the person, ends up throwing up, and then there's all these feelings of, inadequacy because you've, not performed to the best. Whereas if you just like structured the program in an intelligent way, you build up to that level of intensity, and then, you build on the wins. And, towards the end of that, you were doing like, up to like 6 2-minute rounds of like super high intensity, and your heart rate recovery was actually incredible. I couldn't get over like how
Yeah.
well adapted to that type of stuff that you were. So that, that's the benefit. Like if you know that you can push a pace, then, but it only comes with structured training and, well
Yeah.
thought out programming.
Yeah. But I totally agree. Like the confidence that comes with this, that I know, like I can push myself as hard as I can, and I can still go back after 1 minute and do it one more time. Like that's, you can
Yeah,
take
like
that to the
that's,
mats, and it's amazing. Yeah.
oh, that's yeah, it's like a weapon, it's as
Yeah.
much of a weapon as your roundhouse kick or your, your blitz to the, the
Exactly.
strikes is,
Yeah.
to know that you can repeatedly do that is, especially if somebody, it makes people hesitant whenever, there's a quote, I forget who, but, fatigue makes cowards of us all. And it's true, if you're really fatigued, or if you're second guessing, like, oh my God, will I
Yeah.
be able to last this round? Because
Yeah.
that, I think that's the scary. I know Chael Sonnen, the fighter, said it like that. That's the scariest thing for a fighter is not that he'll, get like just caught randomly, caught where he didn't see it, or, that he'll get hit, but like just to fatigue to the point where you can't defend yourself.
Yeah.
And because you know it, and that's a prolonged thing. If you're so fatigued that you actually can't move out of the way of shots, and you're just getting to eat up, and that, like, that's probably, as close to hell for a combat sports athlete as there
Exactly.
is, if you're just so fatigued that you can't actually, you know
Then you know you
uh,
lost. Like,
resourcefully. Yeah, it's like,
yeah.
because it's like not only that you've lost, but it's also just miserable because you're
Yeah.
trying, you're it's like you're drowning,
Exactly.
you're drowning in lactic acid,
Yeah.
and
Ugh.
also someone's trying to kick you in the head.
Yeah.
So that's
What a
also not
disgusting way
nice.
to
Yeah, yeah,
to die.
exactly. So like that double whammy. Yeah. Like, the interval stuff in training is pretty brutal, but
Yeah,
nobody's trying to kick you in the head while you're getting that as
that's
well.
true.
So
That's true.
that's, yeah,
Okay, Connor, the time is passing fast, but I still have a very important topic I want us to talk about, and
no
that's the
problem.
injuries, because I think that's
Yes.
every athlete's nightmare. But can you tell us how to prevent the injuries with the training we're doing?
Yeah.
Like, what kind
So
of things are we doing? And yeah.
what I would say is that overall, with like following a structured strength training plan that takes into account your, previous injury profile, your, let's say, the also takes into account the amount of load that you're doing, so that you're not coming into kickboxing completely sore, because obviously, that's when you start making weird movements as well, and that could predispose you to an injury. But following like the principles of like appropriate load, adding, the right amount, and, following a structured plan that focuses on compound movements, you're going to get from strength training benefits of increasing your bone density. You're going to get your muscles and tendons are going to be trained much better, so that you're going to be less likely to have strains. Any injury is basically a tissue has been subject to a greater force than it can tolerate. So what is strength training? Well, strength training is actually applying forces to tissues, and those tissues adapt, and they can actually respond by being more anti-fragile or resistant to those forces that we exert on them. So whenever we get stronger, we get a little bit more robust to different injuries. So what I would say, big rocks before little rocks. Definitely get your like compound strength movements. Those are like, by compound, for those that wouldn't be familiar with the term, it just means basically multi-joint exercises. So things that are like squats, lunges, overhead presses, those kind of things, that where we're not just like a bicep curl would be like an isolation exercise. It's kind of like a single joint exercise.
Yeah,
we don't get a lot of bang for our buck, for return on investment for those kind of things. I'm not hating on bicep curls. I'll have them in some of the programs, especially for the guys coming up to summer or whatnot. Want to go to the beach and stuff. But you would start off with the big rocks anyway. So things like hinge patterns, push patterns, pull patterns, squats, and getting the quality of the movements really good. Never go for weight over quality, because obviously, you can, I say that getting the tissues to tolerate force, brilliant. We want a lot of that, and probably the more the better, but not at the sacrifice of quality, because sometimes people will do that. They'll get a little bit of ego lifting and they'll try and, beat the numbers. There's no harm in a bit of chasing numbers and a bit of that to keep the motivation high. But if we want to, we don't want to lose sight of, like, this is supposed to keep us fresh for the kickboxing, for the combat sports. So by following these structured kind of plans that are working these compound movements through a reasonably good full range of motion, or as good of a range of motion as we need for our sporting movements, then we get strong through that range with the joints, and then they're hopefully robust, so that whenever, like, actually just a quote, actually Lauren Landau as well, who I kind of talked about earlier, he used to say the strength training, it helps you do all the right things from all the wrong positions, because within sport you're going to find yourself with your knee is freaking rotated in a weird way and you've planted on it, but if you've at least strength trained, then at least those tissues have tolerated force within a deep range of motion before. They've been exposed to enough stress, so hopefully they can be robust enough to do the right things from those wrong positions. And that's kind of like the main benefit of kind of like the general compounds. Then further to that, like, we would have, this is also a bit of Jeffrey Chio stuff, that he actually had a very good kind of ebook out on combat sports stuff, and he talks about the robustness circuits as well. So we would have done a little bit of these kind of robustness things as well, where we'll do, you can do a little bit of banded neck strength, a little bit of like wrist curls, a little bit of calf work, and just kind of those smaller joints that are quite injury prone. Just
can you
keep
look
in
that
like
up on
a
YouTube?
little circuit. I would actually just plug his book and say buy his book if you're interested in this.
What is the name of it?
So it's Jeffrey Chiu. it's like combat sports handbook. So yeah,
Nice. Okay.
definitely check it out. Big endorsement on that. Very, very good training principles. And he would basically endorse just doing these here kind of robustness circuits where, let's figure out like what are the smaller joints that do get broken up from combat sports training, and then we're going to include a little bit of strength in there, like muscle groups and like joints that they aren't going to be the things that like are going to take away from your recovery resources. They're very low risk, potentially high payoff kind of investments into your training time. Now there's some things which are very high risk but potentially high payoff. There's other things that are high risk and low payoff. We obviously want to avoid those. Unfortunately, a lot of training programs emphasize those. But we basically want to strengthen up the smaller joints and those things where, look, you guys, I don't know how many times you guys come in, my wrists bollocks today, or my shoulder today, or whatever it might be. So just keeping in an element of strengthening to those smaller joints, to those things that rotator cuff stuff, and you can just put them in a circuit at the end. It's really trying to emphasize that we get good quality reps on those joints as well, because they are things that tend to get forgotten among the people just come in and hit the bench press or do the beach muscles and stuff, but it's they're things they tend to, like, especially if you do like wrist strengthening and stuff, they tend not to have like those fast twitch fibers that fatigue really easy, so you can actually bang out like 3 sets of 20, and you can do that fairly frequently and hopefully build a bit of robustness through those joints, and it doesn't take very much recovery.
No, you can even do it while watching Netflix.
that recovery pool doesn't get drained so much, so stuff like that definitely I'm into.
Nice. This was a good one to cover, I think. But Connor, I have just one last question for you. And
no problem.
If someone wants to be the best in the world, what is one thing they should do right now?
One thing they should do right now?
Yeah, from your perspective as a sports performance coach. To
be the best in the world. That's a bit of a nebulous question. There's so many
to be the best
many things that you could do.
Hold on. To be the best point fighter in the world, what is one thing they should start doing?
To be the best point fighter in the world, sign up to my program. No, let me no. Look at, just follow structured training program and don't negate the utility of getting your recovery right. Those are the things. I don't even know if that's necessarily doing one thing, but that's like how I would say, that's the philosophy that I think take forward with you, that. And if you want to be the best in the world, look at you have to live it. It's if you want to be number one, there's going to be certain sacrifices that are going to come, outside of, social life, relationships, work. You guys know, you moved to Hungary, you've done the whole ringer, so like that's to get, to the level that you guys have got to, and super proud to, have seen how you guys have represented your country and, performed the way you performed. It was so awesome to see. But like, you guys will attest to, the sacrifice that took. So, if you're going to try and be an elite performer in anything, there's going to be, a certain amount of sacrifice that comes with that. And, I guess it's about knowing yourself and knowing if that's what you're willing to do. Then if that is what you're willing to do, then go after it, follow and live it, live the life of an athlete. Don't just what a lot of people do is they'll be an athlete for training camps, and then they'll
Yeah.
kind of live the high life for a couple of weeks, and then
Yeah.
they kind of go through boom bust cycles. And that's not saying that you have to be 100% strict all of the time, but it just means that you have your priorities in a row where I'm as a habit, even if I have a lighter stint of training, I have the ingrained lifestyle where I get my protein. I get sufficient calories to fuel whatever training I'm doing. I have these kind of inbuilt habits that that's what being an elite performer isn't all about, like having this perfect diet,
Yeah.
this perfect life or whatever, but it's more about have you got your ducks in a row for just these baseline habits, and those standards that you hold, and
Exactly.
live it. It's not
Yeah.
it's not an on-off switch, it's more of a dimmer switch. It's like,
Oh yeah. That's a good
yeah.
that's a really good advice, Connor. Thank you. Now, can you give yourself a shout out? Where can people find you?
No problem. So I'm actually, do I remember I think my Instagram at the minute
Should I
is
check it for you?
Coach Connor. Yeah, can you look? I think it's Coach Connor M. Maybe
Yeah, I
Coach.
think that's true.
There's an underscore in there somewhere, but I'm
Okay,
not
hold
sure
on.
where.
Let me find it.
Just yeah, but if anyone wants to get in contact, they can email me, connor.budapt@gmail.com. If anybody wants to get involved, jump in with a bit of programming. I do online training for people, online programming, or if not, we're based in Budapest here. So we're in the city center beside Octagon, Smasher Training Systems, great sports performance gym here.
Really great, really
great. We have it all. So yeah, if anyone's in Budapest as well, once they jump in with a bit of training, then don't hesitate to get in touch. And yeah, if you can just find my handle.
Yeah, so it's Coach_Connor M.
Perfect. Yeah, I knew there was an underscore somewhere.
Yeah. But yeah, okay.
Brilliant.
So people can if they think, okay, this is what I want, this is the coach I want because he knows about the martial arts, the combat sports, then they can do an online program with you if they are somewhere else than Budapest. That's absolutely cool. That's really great.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Wonderful. No.
Thank you so much, Connor. I'm so happy to have you here.
No, thank you for bearing with me and listening to my ramblings.
Of course, of course. I think you have a lot of great knowledge that should be shared with us.
No, thank you. Nagyon Kusanam, as they say here in Hungary.
Yes, the tough Hungarian language. Okay, I'll see you.